Hello! So for my video, I decided to analyze Midsommar, and honestly, just like I said with Dead Poets Society, this is a movie that I could analyze for hours, so I'm going to do my best to just get in 2 minutes. I wanted to talk about the use of foreshadow in this movie, which part of me is kind of like, oh, that's so basic, but I thought it was interesting in this movie because it's a thriller movie. So usually thriller movies, the point is to never really know what's going to happen, or you're like on the edge of your seat because you're like, you know, what's going to happen next. There's jump scares, there's just overall like things that you don't know that they're going to happen. But in this movie, it was unique because it doesn't do that. There's almost the whole time you kind of know what's going to happen next, whether if it's intuition or you notice the foreshadowing, or if the foreshadowing was just like subconscious in your head. I watched the movie twice, so the second time I picked up on some foreshadowing that I didn't notice the first time. I'm just gonna get right into it because I'm already a minute in, but the first thing I wanted to talk about was the foreshadow to a sex scene. In the end, towards the end of the movie, Christian ends up, in my opinion, it was rape, but that's a whole other thing. He ends up having sex with this girl, and it's really interesting because there's actually, I printed out some pictures. This is an image that is in the background of one of the scenes. There, in the movie, everywhere that they go, there's runes and murals and pictures everywhere. Like in the room, the building that they're sleeping in, there's pictures everywhere, filling the whole wall, filling everything. And almost all these pictures are portraying something that's going to happen in the movie, or referencing some sort of general theme of the movie. Already at 2 minutes. Sorry, Odette, this is going to be over 2 minutes. But this is one of the images, and it's interesting because it's in the sex scene, which I should have... No, I'm not going to print a picture of the sex scene, but they are, you know, having sex, and there's a bunch of women around them watching. So this is interesting because it's very clear that this image right here was portraying that scene happening. Not only that, but they're in a bed of flowers, just like it happens later. This is pretty much exactly what the scene looks like later. Also, kind of along that same line, I printed it wrong, but if you see here, this is a mural that they pass by at one point in the movie. It's read from this way to this way, and you have a picture of a girl. There's more too, but I couldn't find a picture that had the whole mural. This girl she clips off her pubes and collects some of her period blood, and she mixes it into the food of this boy she's trying to get to fall in love with her. So as you can see, she does that, and then he is like under a spell. The girl that, he ends up having sex with later, she's part of the clan, and this is really interesting. I didn't notice this the first time either. I noticed it because I kind of noticed it the first time watching it, but the second time watching it, it was more evident to me because I knew it was going to happen. But there's a scene later where he's eating a pie and he ends up pulling out like a pube. And this is the thing that I didn't notice the first time, but the second time watching it, I realized that his glass of juice was darker than everyone else's juice. So there's that. So she's trying to put a love spell on him. So that was another thing that was predicted in the movie. Another one that was good, I printed this picture, but I realized that in this image you can't actually see it. So I kind of just wasted a bunch of ink, but pretend you can. So in this scene, you have the character Christian. He's sitting in this room, which is very, I'm sure I could go on for 15 minutes just analyzing this image alone. Obviously not in this state because it's really hard to see what's on the walls, but right here on this wall is an image of a bear surrounded by flames, which ultimately ends up being how he dies. He is picked to be a human sacrifice, and they put him inside the carcass of a bear and set him on fire. It's a great movie. You should watch it. But this was really interesting because he's sitting here and he's staring at that picture. There's also another image of that bear somewhere else too. I don't remember where, but it's in there. And then this is my favorite foreshadow. I'm already at 5 minutes. I'm really sorry, but you know, this is my favorite foreshadow. I don't know why, but it is, because I don't know. I think it's because when I noticed it, I was like, oh, that's so clever. But in the beginning of the movie, okay, so there's this character Mark who very perfectly fits the archetype of the fool, the jester, the joker, the comedic relief. That's his character. He doesn't take anything seriously. He's just about girls, and he throws in a few comments that are funny here and there. But there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where they're all just sitting. What's really cool is a lot of this foreshadow happens like at the beginning of the movie. I was gonna talk about how every single one of their deaths were foreshadowed, but that would have taken too much time. I'm already at 6 minutes. But this was interesting because they're all hanging out, and he asks his friend, he's like, hey, so what are the kids doing? Because they're playing Skin the Fool. And then she's like, Skin the Fool? And he's like, yeah, you know, it's just a game they're playing. And you're like, whatever. And then that's it. Later, Mark ends up dying. When he dies, they end up skinning him, essentially. And you find this out when the character Josh gets killed by a guy wearing Mark's face. So he was skinned. And that's really interesting because it's, you know, Mark was the fool archetype. And on top of that, and this is what the image I have, when at the very end, when they're doing the human sacrifices, they took Mark's body, they skinned him, and they stuffed him, and they put a jester's hat on him to even further emphasize that, you know, he was the fool, and he was the fool that got skinned. I thought that was really interesting. I really wish I had more time because I would go more in and keep talking about all the foreshadow. I thought it was a really interesting take that Ari Aster had. I'm excited to see. I now want his other movie, Hereditary. I haven't seen it, but I fully plan on watching it now after watching Midsommar. And it's just, yeah, the way that he used foreshadowing to make it so that you were still kind of on edge, maybe just because it's a really weird and messed up movie, but it was never like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It was like, oh, there, it finally happened. And you kind of always knew it was going to happen because of his use of foreshadowing that I thought was really interesting and unique for a thriller movie, but it worked. And I really liked it. So that was Midsommar. I could keep going, but I'm already 6 minutes past the time I was supposed to take to do this. So I hope you enjoyed.